Yeah, boy. You know what time it is. It's the TLV Sports Talk Show. We talk sports, we talk life, we make you visible. We're back on the air. We had like a little summer vacation, and but we're back now, and all is well. Hope all is well with everybody today, and all is well with your family. Today, I believe it's October the 10th. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. October the 10th, 2019. And we have with us today, he's certainly no stranger. He's my brother from another mother, my brother in Christ, Bruce Deckert. And he has some very information, very good information that he's going to relay. You know, I always say, know your roots, know your culture, or you get ate by the vulture. This broadcast is live on Facebook. It's been live on YouTube TLV Sports Talk Show. And then we got Randy on Twitter, Randy B-Ball. And then of course, right here on Facebook, Randy B-Ball. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my brother from another mother. That's right. Here he comes. What's up, Bruce?
Good evening, Randy. Thank you.
How you doing?
Again, okay. Thanks again for the invite. Just the opportunity to visit and talk together about it's sports and life and faith and all the above.
You're talking about sports. You're up in Massachusetts, right? No, Connecticut. I'm sorry, Connecticut. So let me ask you this. Right now it's football season. So do you have a football team that's from that area, or do you like some team from the West Coast or the Midwest?
Good question. So I grew up in New Jersey, right in the New York metropolitan area. So I grew up rooting for basically all the New York and New Jersey teams. So when I was growing up, both the Jets and the Giants at that time played in Giant Stadium, as I recall. So they were technically the New York Jets, New York Giants, but they played in Jersey. Good old Jersey. I'm a Jersey kid through and through.
Yeah. So the Jets, the Jets lost today. You may or may not know the Jets lost to the Falcons,
okay.
Or they played over in England. And Jets is not having a good season again. They won one game so far. I think I forget who they beat, but and the Giants are getting a whooping right now from the Dallas Cowboys. So the New York teams and the Yankees, they got knocked out of the box. So it remains to see what the New York Knicks are going to do this coming basketball season. So it hasn't been a really good look for New York teams here in times past. They haven't done anything since the Giants, I guess, back in the day with the Peyton guy, with the Manning guy, Eli. But maybe things will turn around soon enough.
Yeah.
But listen, I want everybody to know this is Bruce Deckert of Today Magazine. He's also an author, not only the publisher and owner, or you could say CEO of Today Magazine. But you can find his book on Amazon right here, Serengeti Friendship, Soccer Forgiveness. It's right there on Amazon. That's the link right there. You definitely want to get that book. It's about friendship. It's a wonderful thing. It's clean, it's wholesome, and it has a lot of messages in it. So we encourage you to join that, get on that link, and read that book and buy that book. It doesn't. How much is that book online, Bruce?
It's $11.99, and
11.
And what I will often say when I'll post occasionally, I've got a Twitter page for the book and a Facebook page, and what I'll often say is if somebody really wants to read it and they don't think they can afford it, to reach out and let me know. I'll see what I can do to get you a copy. To me, the main thing, really, I think the main thing is I would appreciate people reading it. I think it's worth reading. And if you can't afford it, reach out and I'll do my best to get you a copy. But I think it's $11.99 on Amazon. I may drop that at some point, but that's what it is now.
Well, that's a good price. Now, let me ask you this: is it paperback or is it an e?
It's paperback. So it's a paperback, and there's a paperback version. If you want to actually hold it like the normal book, quote unquote. There's also a Kindle version.
Cool.
They're both available at that link.
Cool. 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 Um, reason why I asked that because a lot of people they're into ebooks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So also you can follow Bruce on WordPress. That's his blog. Yeah, very easy to get onto. You can see the link right there. I encourage you to listen to the things that that he's talking about in his neighborhood. Tell us, Bruce, the areas that your magazine is in, as far as up there in Connecticut.
So Today Magazine, we cover the heart of the Farmington Valley. That's one of the taglines that I've been utilizing. The Farmington Valley is a distinct geographic area just west of Hartford, Connecticut. So Hartford is the capital of Connecticut, basically the center of the state. The Farmington Valley is this geographic area just west and a little bit north and west of Hartford. There are 5 core towns: the towns of Avon, Canton, Farmington, the namesake, Granby, and Simsbury. And so that's the Farmington Valley. And we cover news that's somehow connected to the valley. So it's the news we cover is interconnected with news in Connecticut, Greater Hartford, but focusing on the valley. So we have right now, powerful cover story on right here in Avon, Connecticut. There was just a couple of years ago, there was a bridge project. They were replacing an old bridge, putting a new bridge in. In the excavation of that bridge, they typically hire archaeological teams, I guess, with some of the state Department of Transportation projects to see, is there anything here that we need to preserve before we, put this new road or bridge in. They uncovered a 12,005, what the scientists and the archaeologists are calling a 12,500-year-old Paleo-Indian sites. So these are some of the historians tell us, some of the first people to live in Connecticut were in this settlement that they discovered. So just an amazing story. That's our cover story for October.
Oh, that's for October.
Mm-hmm.
So the cover story that we're going to talk about tonight is from September.
Yeah,
again, folks,
this is
October the 10th. This is October the 10th, 2021. We want everybody to know that. Some people like to pirate things and, do some crazy things, but that's why we're telling you the date right now. And hopefully, this will be this will be in the archives. So the feature story for September, let's talk about that because a lot of people just don't know. Here it is right here. All right. Talk to us about, I don't know. It's kind of hard to see.
So actually that's the jump page. That's the continue page. So the page that's right behind you is the cover, the lead of that story, the Amistad story.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So now what we want to see is this page here.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Which is the green screen, which is behind me also. Amistad, amazing story rooted in local history. Now, they made a movie about Amistad, okay, some time ago with Morgan Freeman and different actors that Matthew Montgomery, I forget how you say his name. He was the attorney there. And it's actually a true story, right, Bruce?
It is definitely a true story. It's rooted in history. It's an amazing story. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar, Amistad was well, let's see. How do we condense this story, Randy? So if you want to read about it, you can check out this is our one of our feature stories in the September magazine. So you can go to www.todaypublishing.net. Today Publishing is the kind of the overall name of the media outlet, and then we produce Today Magazine. And so this is one of the feature stories in our September edition.
Well, let me plug that in so we can have that for the people to see because they're not going to remember everything you said.
Sure.
So it's
So it's www
www.
today publishing.net. And so, yeah, and so the Amistad, I'm figuring that many people will be familiar with the story from the movie. Perhaps it's a Steven Spielberg movie, with some tremendous actors, as you could see. Basically, it's about a group of men from Sierra Leone, what's current day Sierra Leone, in which I believe is Western Africa, somewhere in that neighborhood. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they were taken unlawfully. They were kidnapped from their home country. They were taken here. They were taken to Cuba, as I recall, and they were about to be sold as slaves unlawfully. Essentially, the research that the reporter and we worked together on this story in many ways. He wrote it, and I worked with him on it. The history tells us that basically every conceivable law related to just international relations and everything was just violated when these men were kidnapped. So they were taken here unlawfully. And it was during the height of the slave trade. So apparently there were some legal ways people could, that's mind boggling, of course, that was even possible. Horrendous, again. But in this case, this was absolutely, even in those days, it was illegal, unlawful. So they were taken to Cuba. Then they were moved to another ship called the Amistad. That was the name of the ship. Okay. And they were being moved to another part of Cuba. And in that transit, it was supposed to be, I think, a several-day journey along the coast of Cuba. One of the men who had been unlawfully kidnapped and was being unlawfully sold as a slave, he was able to get out of his chains, and then he freed the others. They took the ship. In the ensuing struggle, the captain was killed. The cook of the ship was killed. The two quote unquote slave owners, the men who had purchased quote unquote these men who were unlawfully kidnapped, they survived. And so I'm trying to make a long story short here, but
no, take your time. Explain it fully because people need to know. Look, you know your roots and know your culture, or you'll get ate by the vulture. So you have the truth of the situation here, and a lot of people that are watching, they have no idea of this. A lot of people haven't even seen the movie because they don't put this movie on TV or out on YouTube that much because it really tells about the truth, and it shows how Africans actually sold Africans for slaves. So I don't want to tell the end of the story, but go ahead, Bruce. Take your time.
Indeed, I don't think that happened in this case. To my knowledge, that wasn't part of this situation because it was the men who captured them were Portuguese, I believe. That's in the story, and I could review that and double check that. But in this case, I think they were Portuguese slave traders that kidnapped the men and took them to Cuba. And they may have been Spanish, but in any event, they were, so they were brought to Cuba. And then, again, the one of the men from Sierra Leone who had been kidnapped was able to get out of his chains on the Amistad. Now, Amistad is Spanish for friendship, I believe. Yeah, it's right there you can see right in the background. Spanish for friendship. So talk about a sad irony. The name of the ship was Friendship, and it basically had anything to do, everything except friendship. I mean, these men were being kidnapped and enslaved. So in any event, they took the ship. So their immediate goal, history tells us, and we refer to a number of different historical sources to report this story. Oh, and by the way, you can see in the background the page says Farmington Today on the magazine page. So Farmington again is it's the signature or the namesake town of the Farmington Valley. Just so people know, the reason we reported this story is because so the short version of this is the men, they ended up in Farmington, Connecticut. These slaves, the men who had been enslaved illegally, kidnapped, they attempted to bring this ship back to Sierra Leone. So by day, they were using the sun to navigate, and they were attempting to head back east across the Atlantic Ocean back to their home. At night, they did not. So they were not shipmen. They were not savvy, so to speak. At night, the two Spanish men who had essentially purchased them they basically tried to steer the ship back. So it kind of took the zigzag journey. Somehow the ship ended up going north and getting close to Long Island. Somehow that's how this played out. A federal ship then took the ship. And so these men were arrested. They were charged with murder because the cook and the captain and some other crew had been killed in the struggle. And then they were held. And this was, now, pardon me, I don't remember the exact date. This was sometime in the 1800s. So, and we can
I think it was before the 1800s. One of the Adams, was it John Quincy Adams?
1840. I see it right behind you, actually. 1840.
Okay, yeah. So who was the president then? Was it John Quincy Adams or John Adams?
So John, I think it was John Adams. John Quincy Adams. So yeah, John Quincy Adams ended up arguing their case before the U.S. Supreme Court. So he had been president prior to this, as I recall, and then he was a trained lawyer. And so John Quincy Adams. So they were detained just off the coast of Long Island. They were brought to New Haven, Connecticut first, as I recall. And then they were put on trial for murder. And the long story short is they were represented abolitionists. So this was 1841, I think is when it was, 1840, somewhere in that neighborhood. A number of abolitionists in the North hired a few lawyers. I think all three were from Connecticut, at least one or two were, to represent these men from Sierra Leone. They represented them here in Connecticut, and then the case ended up going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's where John Quincy Adams argued their case. And these men were found not guilty. They were exonerated. And then after they were found not guilty, that's when Farmington, Connecticut came into play, because they were found not guilty. And then people in Farmington gave these men a place to stay for, as I recall, a number of months before they were able to go back home to Sierra Leone. So that's how Farmington comes into play. And so the Farmington Historical Society has some great resources related to this case. Farmington has a number of locations that were part of, there were stops on the Underground Railroad in Farmington and in other places in Connecticut, but Farmington has a number of them. And so it's just a powerful part of the history of Farmington, Connecticut, and in the Farmington Valley, that they provided, these citizens of Farmington provided a temporary home for these men from Sierra Leone after they were found not guilty by the U.S. Supreme Court, represented by a former president who was a lawyer, and then they were temporarily resided in Farmington, and then they were able to go back home. So
wow. So yeah, that area in which you're in has a lot of historical value, because I remember when you came on once before, you talked about Martin Luther King being in that area.
Oh yeah.
Also, which is a pretty good story. A lot of people don't know a lot of things because mainstream media is not going to tell you that. The History Channel is not going to tell you those things. But I'm quite sure that this is a wonderful article. It was your feature story for for September, you say, right?
It was one of our features in September. Yep, that's right.
Right. And so if someone missed that in the September issue, how can they get the, can they go into your archives? Is there some way of going into your archives at todaypublishing.net?
Yep, yeah. And in fact, you don't even have to go to the archives. So what we do is, so if you go to that link that you see on the screen, www.todaypublishing.net, go to that link, and right on our homepage, we typically have the current edition, the previous edition. The links are right there on the homepage. Toward the top, you'll see it says monthly digital editions. There'll be a link for October. There'll be a link for September, and then just click on the September link, and that will bring you to the September magazine. And
Wonderful.
then you can just open the page, open the magazine one page, and you'll see there'll be a the contents, and it'll tell you the page you can find the Amistad
So
story.
that's the only way that they can receive Today magazine.
So they can, yeah, anyone can receive it. It's free. It's a free subscription. We all you got to do, there's when you go to that website, if you want to receive our monthly magazine, you can just put your email address in there, and we'll add you to our distribution list. It's automated. And I really, again, I feel like we're covering some powerful news, and anybody, I think is relevant, certainly relevant to the Farmington Valley. But if you're outside Connecticut, if you're somewhere else in the country or in the world, we're covering some, universal human stories. So yeah, the more the merrier. So.
Oh, so this is an international magazine then?
Well, sure. I mean, just like anything on the internet, anybody can access it. You know what I mean? So yeah, anyone with an internet access anywhere can subscribe for free, and they can read our magazine going to the website for sure. And we also post across our social media. We're part of all the major the social media platforms. So we post it typically more than 30 times a month, which we want to get the magazine out so that I think it's worth reading, as I mentioned, and for our advertisers' sake, we're getting the content out there, the ads out there, and we're posting it across 5 social media sites several times, 5 to 6 times per month across 5 sites. On 4 of those sites, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, I've got 2 pages, the magazine page and my personal page. So that's 8 pages right there. So that's where, more than 30, 40, sometimes 50 times a month, I'm posting it on those 8 major pages. Plus there's another lesser known social media network called Alignable. So that's the 9th page. So anyway, there's just a little nitty gritty there in terms of our social media distribution,
Well, this broadcast is going to be on the platform of Facebook, like we said in the beginning of the broadcast, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. And also what we're going to do is we're going to download it, because we can download this, and we're going to send it to LinkedIn, so it'll get a lot of coverage. And definitely, hey, that's what we do. We talk sports, we talk life, we make you visible. And of course, we don't do anything for monetary reasons. We do it because that's what we're supposed to do. I'll just leave it at that. Each one help each one, and to make this world a better place to live in, when you have something positive and a good message. So that's what we're about. We're not about a bunch of nonsense and negative things, but we will expose you if you're not working right in government, or if you're not working right in Hollywood or sports or whatever it is, and you're doing things that it's unlawful, or it's illegal, or it's just not right, for humanity. We're going to talk about it. We're not afraid to talk about it. We're not ashamed to talk about it. So it's not all gravy and cherries and everything is smooth. That's what a lot of people want. They want, tell us to smooth things. They don't want to handle the rough things in life that's taking place. And so even social media, if you say too much, and it rubs them the wrong way against their policies, they'll censor you. but we're not like that. We're going to tell it like it is, and if we have to be a martyr, we'll be a martyr. We talk sports, we talk life, we make you visible. It's TLV Sports Talk Show. We got Bruce Deckert from Today Magazine, and listen, get on www.todaypublishing.net, and believe me, you'll be really informed of a lot of things that's coming through his magazine. Uh, Whoever's just joining on, whoever's looking at us now, live viewers, we want to thank you for listening to or joining in with us. This is about Amistad. Can you just one more time tell the people about Amistad and what it meant for the area? Really, I mean, it's a historic area. A lot of people, they just don't know about Amistad. They don't know what took place with that trial. Like I said before, they won't bring it on TV, and show you the truth, but that it is what it is. So Amistad actually had the court right. They had the case right there in the Connecticut, in New Haven area. That's what you said.
That's my that's my understanding now. I mean, one of the kind of privileges that I have in terms of being able to report a lot of these stories is that this the proverbial, you learn something new every day. I mean, I learned a great deal about this story in working with the writer and reporting it and researching it. So um, the initial court case, as I recall, was in New Haven, and then it did go, to the U.S. Supreme Court, and again represented, these men who were unlawfully kidnapped, unlawfully enslaved. They were represented by John Quincy Adams, the former president, who was a trained lawyer, and he argued the case, and just I mean, a victory. I think a victory for humanity, you could say. I mean, it's just the tragic part of American history, just the way the whole slavery played out, and then you referred to Martin Luther King Jr., Randy. So his role, his connection here with the Farmington Valley is worth talking about in this context. Martin Luther King Jr. spent 2 summers here, 2 formative summers. One was when he was going into his freshman year of college. The next summer, that was 1944, and then in 47 he was going into his senior year of college. So he was up here with fellow college students. He went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, where he grew up, and those 2 summers they worked up here. They were basically working their summer job to make money to pay their college tuition, and those 2 summers were the first time. 44. So by the way, he was only 15 years old. He was like some kind of genius. Obviously he was very bright, but he graduated high school, a couple of years early. So he was 15 that summer, and then became went into his freshman year of college down in Atlanta. That was his first trip, and we've talked about this, but I think it's worth talking about again.
Most definitely.
That was his first trip out of the segregated South. So he grew up in segregation. So he comes up here with these fellow college students, and he wrote back to his parents, we went to church, and there were white people and black people in the same church together. That didn't happen in those days in the South. We went to a restaurant in Hartford. We sat in the same area as people, different races, in the same, and that was just unheard of in the Jim Crow South. And so Martin Luther King Jr.'s 2 summers here, I mean, it's as clear as day. And some of the letters he wrote, and then some of he spoke in 1959. So this was 15 years later, before he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. So this is 5 years before he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He spoke at Hartford Seminary, right here in Connecticut. And in that talk, students who were investigating his time here in Simsbury, they discovered this audio tape of the talk he gave at Hartford Seminary, and he referred to the time he spent working in Simsbury those 2 summers. And yeah, so that is just a remarkable story. Just the influence and the impact his time here in Connecticut had on his view of civil rights, his view of justice, social justice. It's just, yeah, it's quite a story. And again, not everybody knows that. I mean, I think it's more well known than it was, and we've reported it, in Today Magazine. It's been an honor to report this story in Today Magazine. But Randy, what happened? So, well, I can pause here. I was going to segue. Do I have a moment to segue real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what happened was about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, a group of students here in Simsbury at Simsbury High School set out to discover. So for decades. So he was here in 1944 and 47. So about 10 years ago, it was 2009, the summer of 2009. So 12 years ago. Stories had circulated for decades. Oh yeah, there were Simsbury residents who said, "Oh yeah, I met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was here as a 15-year-old, as an 18-year-old," and it got to the point where people started questioning, like, did this really happen? Like, was Martin Luther King really here, or is this kind of some suburban urban myth that came about? So these students at Simsbury High, a group of about 10 students, they decided, we want to investigate this and find out, was he really here? So they did some heavy duty historical investigation. They interviewed local residents. They discovered these letters that he wrote home from Simsbury those 2 summers. They discovered that audio tape of his talk at Hartford Seminary. And Randy, he wrote, so I think it was shortly after he graduated from Morehouse College is when he went to seminary in Pennsylvania, as I recall. On his seminary application, he wrote that his call to the ministry took place that first summer he was here in Connecticut, 1944.
Wow.
And he was elected by that. There was a group of about 100 students who were up here working. He was elected to be the leader of that group. So he would, like, on Sunday mornings, he would lead some of their services and so forth. And so you could see the leadership, the leadership gifts that he had were evident then. But in any event, so these students, they investigated it. They put together this documentary, and you can find this documentary online. You can go to todaypublishing.net, go to our archive story. There's a story from August of 2019. We have some other stories. You can probably just Google search Martin Luther King Jr. Simsbury Today Magazine, and you find a number of the stories that we have covered on this. But these students put together this documentary. CBS Evening News, the national CBS Evening News telecast, picked it up, did a 4 or 5 minute segment on it, and it became, became a national story. And at that time, I think there were a lot of people who had no idea that Martin Luther King Jr. was here in Simsbury for 2 summers. And now, fast forward 12 years, I think there's still a lot of people who don't know that, So it's quite a story. And these students, they just did an amazing job. And then the reason we picked up the story, I mean, it's obviously a story worth telling regardless. Fast forward, 10 years from 2009. So in 2019, 2020, a current group of students kind of took the baton from that first group, and they established a memorial here in town in Simsbury to honor the fact that Martin Luther King was here those summers. So that memorial was unveiled earlier this year. It's right on the front lawn of the Simsbury Free Library. If anybody, it either is going to become or has already become an official stop on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And so if anybody's visiting Simsbury, Connecticut, and they were interested in some of Martin Luther King Jr.'s history and his connection here, It's a tremendous memorial. It's not just like a granite monument. It's a series of 5 glass panels that have etchings, like has like tell some of the story of his time here in Connecticut. So anyway, that's probably more information than you needed, but there's so much more to
No,
this
that
story.
that's good information, and there's a lot of information that has not been told uh, from the time that Martin became who he was as far as a civil rights leader, and the people that assassinated him, and the story behind the story. A lot of people don't understand what's going on even today. Um, Certainly, that was a time where uh, integration was a necessary thing to occur, because the suppression and oppression and depression of a race of people had gone on long enough.
Yeah.
And so it is even today. People are not just only African Americans, Black America, Latino America, um, just people in general that are being suppressed by those who feel as though that they're more superior than others in the way of economics, in the way of that they control the world, and the way that they control the monetary system. And so a lot of that has excelled since Martin Luther King was alive here on earth. And he served his purpose for his time that he was here, for that particular era. And this is a new era now. This is now in the fall of 2021. And we as a people all over the world, we have been suffering from oppression, and the truth is going to come out what it's all about, especially with the quote unquote with the with the jab and the 19 and so forth and so on. It's all been it's been really a cover up for what they really want to do, and that's really continue to take over the world as far as the monetary system. A lot of people don't even know what's taking place with the fiat currency going down. The Federal Reserve Bank, who are a bunch of bankers who actually run all the nations that are under the Federal Reserve, and their demise because of the quantum financial system, uh, going into effect. But people will find out the truth, because there's always light. There might be darkness, but light always wins. Light always wins. And so the people held in darkness, this is, from Amistad all the way before Amistad, even when the Hebrews were in Egypt, they were in bondage, and God said, "Let my people go." And so, and by the way, not all Jews are Hebrews. I just gonna throw that out there. They say they're Jews, but they're not. And there's just good and there's just evil. Simple as that. There's light and then there's darkness. And certainly, what you're doing again, Bruce, with today's magazine, is a wonderful thing, because it's light. There's nothing but light, and it's nothing but the truth. And it's not a perspective. It's a good thing. And I'm real proud of just to know you, Bruce Deckert, Today Magazine. If you want to find out what's going on with Today Magazine, just www.todaypublishing.net, and get on that website and subscribe and get that magazine. It's now a monthly magazine, right? Or is it every 3 months, Bruce?
It is a month, right? We've been a monthly.
It used to be every 3 months, right?
No, it was always monthly. And in fact, this October is our 3rd anniversary of our first publication. So we launched in October of 2018. So this is kind of a neat milestone, our 3rd anniversary. And we've been monthly. It's been a monthly magazine since the inception. And we also have what I call it, like our 24/7 news site, where in between the monthly magazines we have it's your standard news platform where we can publish any day of the week, any time. We usually publish a couple stories a week, give or take, in addition to the monthly magazine.
So I maybe I have it twisted because I forget. So it started out in one town and it's in three towns now. Maybe that's
Right.
what
Yeah.
it
So
is.
yeah. So that's what. Yeah. So we started out in
Yeah.
Canton, and then we expanded to 3 towns, and now we're covering the whole valley. So there are 5 core towns in the Farmington Valley. We started out with Canton Today magazine. That's how we launched 3 years ago. Then that was October 2018. April of 2019, we expanded to cover uh, Avon and Simsbury along with Canton. So we were covering the tri-town area, quote unquote, of the valley. And then a year ago, July of 2020, we expanded to the whole valley. And so that's when that's when we covered. So that's when we picked up Farmington is the southernmost town in the valley. And Farmington is, of course, where the Amistad story is linked directly to Farmington, and then Granby in the north. So that's the brief history of our
I'm
magazine.
loving it because it's been 3 years, but look how God establishes you. Some people, they want to start out and do something real big right away, and they don't realize the grind and the trials and the tribulations and the
Mm,
things that you got to go through to persevere and go forward. But
mm.
as you go forward and you do that which is good, your territory expands, and not only that, you can see the growth. 3 years, you start out with one location, and now it's 3-year anniversary, and you're in 5 locations. Is that what you just said?
Five towns, right? Yeah, we're covering
Five
we're covering the
towns.
5 towns.
So think about that. I mean, that's really a blessing, and it's really an honor to have you on the air, folks. This is Bruce Deckert from Today Magazine. Again, we can't say it enough. www.todaypublishing.net. Bruce Deckert. Also, he has a blog talk now. You want to get on that also. I'm going to post that up here and in the banner here. So let's see here.
Can I
There it
can
is
I
right
say something?
there.
Is it okay to say something real quick about that?
Sure.
So yeah, so just so it's the name of the blog is a slow life in the fast lane. And if you go to that link, you'll see on the blog page, FAST is all caps, FAST, and so that's an acronym for Faith and Sports Talk. So it's, hey, directly connected to TLV Sports Talk Show, right? It's Faith and Sports Talk, and so the blog deals with life and faith issues that are connected to sports in some way. So we didn't mention this yet today, Granby, and I sometimes I don't like saying this because I don't want to name drop, and I'm not a big name by any means, but I worked for 16, 17 years at ESPN.com, the proverbial worldwide leader in sports.
Right.
And there's a backstory to how I worked there. Anyway, I've worked in the media for 25 years. 17 of those years I was at ESPN, working for their website as an editor primarily. And in my work there, I would be reading these sports stories that presumably had nothing to do with faith or whatever, but I'd be reading this story and I'd say, whoa, this connects with, I grew up in the church. I've persevered in the church the best I can. I've been a Christian my whole life, and we can talk about worldviews and what Christian means. There's a lot to discuss about these terms and these realities, right? But I would be reading, so one example, Derek Redmond, amazing story, Derek Redmond. I just revised. One of the essays I used to launch this blog in 2012 was the story of Derek Redmond, Randy, and we've talked about this, as I recall, previously. But Derek Redmond was a British sprinter, the Barcelona Olympics. He pulled up lame. He had been injured the '88 Seoul Olympics in Seoul, South Korea. He gets hurt again in the semifinals of the 400 race. This is, if you can YouTube this, folks. Derek Redmond, just YouTube Derek Redmond's 1992 Olympics. This is when he pulls up lame. He stopped. He's like emotionally crushed because for 4 years he had been wanting to redeem himself and have an opportunity to compete in the Olympics. He's hurt. He gets up, he decides he's going to finish. He starts hobbling along like the race is done. Then there's like 60,000 plus people there. This man comes out of the stands. He pushes past security. He comes out to Derek Redmond, and he comes up to him. He puts his arm around him. You know who it was? It was his dad. And I'm getting choked
Oh,
up.
you get teary eye.
It's an amazing story. And when that occurred, Randy, for me, it gave me a glimpse of that is kind of the heart that God is said to have for human beings. You know, what the incarnation means when, you know, Jesus of Nazareth shows up in human history and he comes alongside people who are hurting, who need forgiveness, who need help. You know, we all need help. We all need, we need help to get through life, bottom line, you know, and God offers that in the incarnation. And so this was like a real life parable that played out in front of 65,000 people in Barcelona and a worldwide, audience watching on TV. And to me, it gave a powerful picture of the message of the Christian faith. And so I wrote about this in the essay one of the essays I used to launch the blog, and I just recently revised it. So if you want to check that out, again, I think it's worth reading. I'm biased. I wrote it, but I mean, but it's just, Malcolm Muggeridge. So Derek Redmond was a British sprinter. One of Derek Redmond's fellow countrymen was a gentleman named Malcolm Muggeridge, and his name will probably be familiar with some of you. He was a very well-known journalist, 60s, 70s, I guess. And he converted to the Christian faith at some point in his, as I recall, during his journalism career. And one of the things he wrote was that every happening, great and small, is a parable whereby God is speaking, and the art is understanding the message. And Randy, I read that, as I recall, in a Reader's Digest. Like, it wasn't a Muggeridge book. It was like a little quote that Reader's Digest pulled out and had it on one of their pages back 25 years ago, say. And that quote has just stayed with me. And I really think it just rings true that everything that happens, like, as sometimes it seems like God is distant. There's no question. I can tell from my life story. My parents were divorced. My dad was part of my life, but he walked away from my family when I was young. I have sensed God's absence. Certainly the psalmist, God, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? Other times the psalmist says, thank you, God. You're so close, so there's this tension in life. But Muggeridge, that quote just resonates with me in an ongoing way, that all of life is a parable, that even though it seems that God is silent, sometimes it seems like God is distant, like God is speaking all the time. And I don't always hear him clearly, but I try to. And so this blog is an ongoing attempt to kind of to look at, how does God speak through the world of sports? How does God speak throughout our lives? And how can we hear God? And how can we know him, know him better, and grow in the true love that comes from God? And there's a mystery, there's paradox, there's pain in life, there's joy.
Yeah.
But that's all part of life. And so anyway, that, I apologize for that lengthier digression, but
never apologize for speaking for God. Okay. We never apologize. We never apologize, because that's reality. Okay. And while you were talking, I was hearing, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Now, many people think that, when God fixes my heart and I turn my heart over to the Lord and give my heart to the Lord, I will see God. That's true. But it also means, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You should see God in nature. You shall see God in analogies like you just gave. The Father showing love to the Son, the sons of God. Okay. When we think we're at our last hope, when all we have to do is just finish the course, because the young man, he had a determination to finish, but he needed help.
Yep.
So here comes the Father to give you the help. See, and because we're flesh and we don't recognize God, and sometimes we do. Some people do. I know I did. I know I needed peace. I needed joy. I needed a lot of things in my life before I gave my life to the Lord. And I'm never ashamed of saying, yes, I'm not a religious person. I'm a follower, disciple of Jesus Christ. I know him. He knows me. And it's a knowing. It's a relationship. It's not religion. Okay. It's not religion. It's a personal relationship where God speaks to you, and he speaks to you from his word. His word is inspired by the Holy Spirit. His word is truth. His word is life. And if you read his word and believe his word and act on his word, you'll get to know who he is. He has many characters. God is a God of judgment. God is slow to anger. God is a God of grace, a God of love, a God of mercy. He's a God of healing, and he'll give you just whatever you need as an individual. He'll give it to you. It's personal. And then you know that you know that you know. So we never, for Paul said, I'm never ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So folks, having said all that, we want to say thank you, Bruce Deckert, for coming on the air. And we look forward to the next edition. Probably maybe right after Christmas. The Christmas edition will be really good. Come back on the air right around Christmas time or before Christmas. Can you do that?
That sounds good. And I got another great cover story that we could talk about for the December issue. I'm hoping
cool.
It should be a good one to talk about if we can visit in December. That sounds good.
Let's do it. Let's do it for sure. Well, folks, in the meantime, in between time, everybody knows the deal. Again, this has been Bruce Deckert from Today Magazine, www.todaypublishing.net. You can find him on that website, and you can find Today Magazine, all the archives and everything that's going on from the 5 different various geographical places in Connecticut there in the Valley. And you'll really enjoy what's being said. So in the meantime, in between time, everybody knows the deal. This has been Randy B along with Bruce Deckert. Hey, it's been wonderful. It's been really, really good. And we want to see you again.
Thank you, Randy.
All of y'all. All right. In the meantime, in between time, everybody knows the deal. We're off like a dirty shirt. You are now entering into the TLV Sports Talk Show broadcast. Taking life's visions, where we talk sports, we talk life, we make you visible with your main man, Randy B. Now join us in the chat